Now, more evidence is emerging about how Hamas treated the hostages. It drugged, beat and sexually abused Israelis while they were being held hostage. And some of these details will be distressing, so a warning there. The Tel Aviv Medical Centre has received and treated 14 former hostages, among them a girl who was given horse tranquiliser for a few weeks. A few weeks of horse tranquiliser to a girl. This was during her time in captivity. Children were also reportedly drugged with what doctors believe were a class of sedative depressants similar to anti-anxiety medication like Valium, this in order to keep the children under control. We already know that children were threatened with rifles if they cried, and it's why the 9-year-old girl, Emily Hand, was too scared to speak above a whisper when she came home to her father. At least 10 Israeli civilians released by Hamas, both men and women, have also reported being sexually assaulted or abused in captivity. Others were tormented psychologically, forced to watch brutal videos of their family members being murdered. Others were kept in pitch-black rooms for days at a time. There are believed to be around 137 Israelis still being held hostage by Hamas. Let's bring in now Israeli politician Sharren Haskel. Thank you so much for your time again. Look, this detail that we're learning about how innocent families were treated by Hamas, do you worry that particularly the children and the teenagers will take a very long time, if ever, to fully recover?
Absolutely. It's going to take a long time for them to recover, and they're going through rehabilitation at the moment, and they have an entire medical staff to support them here in Israel. They were abused, they were drugged, they were assaulted, they were forced to watch horrifying videos of Hamas butchering their families and their communities. Some of them were operated and really, really badly. One girl was operated by a veterinarian, causing damage to her arm. Another operation that was on a foot on one of the girls, they misplaced back the foot, and she had to go a few operations afterwards here in Israel afterwards. So, you know, the abuse that they went through there is really worrying, and we're looking forward to bringing them back. We understand that we have a time limit, and we are trying to reach them and to get to them as soon as possible and as quickly as possible. Yesterday, there were a few declarations of some Hamas leaders and some speeches that they say that they will not negotiate and they will not recognize Israel, and they'll continue to fight not just in the land of Israel, but also in the entire world. And that's worrying. We understand that we...
Yeah, it's absolutely terrifying. Look, you gave a very passionate speech. You've accused the United Nations Relief and Works Agency of encouraging the hatred of Jews. Can you take us through what you mean by these accusations against this United Nations agency?
Absolutely. I went to the European Union in Brussels to try and form a coalition to try and dismantle UNRA. UNRWA is an agency of the United Nations that is dedicated only to perpetuate the conflict in Israel. It's dedicated only to continue to eternalize this Palestinian refugee status. And there's many issues with that agency. I want to take you a little bit back, because you need to understand that the definition of a Palestinian refugee is completely different to a refugee from anywhere else in the world. The Palestinian refugee is actually a status that you inherit. It means that your grandchildren and great-grandchildren, even though they were never in the conflict, even though they were born somewhere else in the world, were raised there, and their parents were born somewhere else in the world and raised there, they still hold this status. And the reason why they want to hold this status is because it became some of a professional, and it's actually profitable to hold this status, because the United Nations is paying their welfare, their housing, their education. So who won't want to stay a Palestinian refugee forever, even their great-great-grandchildren? And that creates an issue when you look on Gaza. If you look on Gaza, 70% of the Gazan citizens are refugees. They are refugees in their own autonomy, on their own land, and their great-grandchildren who were born there, perpetuating this idea.
Yeah, and we know the figures as well that Palestinians in Gaza are one of the fastest growing populations in the world. Sharren Haskel, thank you so much for joining us once again today. I always appreciate your time in the program.